Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here this evening. We were last year when we were all together, as 4 of us, and what was it, January? January. It was a cold night. We had some ice outside, but it was warm in here, so thank you for being here. I'm obviously David Dewhurst. I'm a proud... you can't hear me? There you go. All right. I better stay right here. All right. I'm obviously David Dewhurst. I'm a proud Texan. I'm a veteran, a proud veteran. I'm a rancher. I'm a businessman, lifelong businessman. And that really makes a difference. I'm the only career business person elected statewide out of 29 statewide elected officials. And so it affects how I look at problems. I look at the scoreboard. I want to solve problems. I'm not as good of a speaker as Dan is. I've known Dan for a long time. He's a very good speaker. I'm not as good of a speaker as he is, but I like to solve problems. And so that's what I've been doing over the last 10 years, trying to solve problems for you. When I came in, Texas was a good state economically. Today, she's a great state. And that's because of you. What I've tried to do is get government out of your way. What I've tried to do is cut your taxes. So that's the reason why Texas is one of the 4 most frugal states in the country in per capita state taxes. Over the last 10 years, in the Senate, we've worked with our members in our Senate and in the House, and we've passed tax cuts, hold on to your seat, 54 times for almost $16 billion. In the 2006 session, we went in and cut local school property taxes by 1/3. And so we were able to cut your property taxes by almost 25%. So, and we've tried to have the lightest regulatory hand. So, this election to me isn't about who's more conservative, because we're both real conservative. As a matter of fact, Dan said several times that he agrees with me 98% of the time. Now guys, my wife didn't agree with me 98% of the time. So we're both conservative. Give it to him. But this is about who's got the ability, who's shown they have the ability to lead this state, who has the integrity, can bring House members, the senators together to move the state forward, and who has a vision for the future. And I want to talk about that, because I want to finish the job I started in securing our border. We've already appropriated $800 million. I'm really proud. We've already proved we can secure the border. I want to make sure that we get school choice passed. I want to drug test people on welfare, and I want to cut taxes again. Thank you.
Well, good evening, everyone. It is great to be back. You all were so kind to me in the election. Many of you in here voted for me, have endorsed me, and I'm very proud. And we were happy to come back during this last week before the election and during the middle of early vote. Let me hold that closer there. I'm running for Lieutenant Governor, not against anyone, but for my conservative vision that I believe, the conservative agenda that has not been completed. And I appreciate the Lieutenant Governor's public service. We've done some good things together. I just think it's now time for new energy, new passion, new change. There will be some differences. I will not appoint half of the Democrats to be chairman of committees in the Texas Senate. There is a difference from working with the other side and letting the other side have too much power. Our Tea Party and conservative groups all across the state work too hard to elect great conservatives, not to have them in positions of power to complete the agenda. And what is that? It's real border security. We still have, from 2006 to 2012, we apprehended 1,134,000 people crossing our border. Now that's good news, except we get 1 out of every 5 or 6, so another 5 or 6 million got through. From 2008 to 2012, we apprehended 141,000 criminals that we identified as being here illegal, not people who were working in the service industry with too many speeding tickets, serious hardened criminals. And we charged them with 447,000 crimes in 4 years, 5,000 and 2,000 murders. Now the Supreme Court has said much of immigration policy must be left up to the federal government, but when it comes to public safety, we have a right to protect our citizens. As your Lieutenant Governor, we'll get the border secured, and instead of catching 1 out of 5, we'll get 4 out of 5. We'll never get 100%, but we will get that done. Secondly, property taxes. The problem with the property tax cut that was made before I was in office, which was 2000, it was the 2006 summer before I got there in the 2007, was that if you don't tie a property tax cut rate to an appraisal rate, then you don't ever really get a property tax cut because it disappears in your higher appraisals. What we need to do is disconnect the property taxes from the increase in appraisals. Think of it as a seesaw. Right now, if your property goes up 8% or 9% a year, so do your taxes. We need to disconnect so as your property value goes up, the effective tax rate goes down, never to any more than population inflation, which has been running 3 to 4%, a little lower, a little higher, depending on the economy. And then if the local county, cities, and school districts need more money, then they have to come to you and get your approval. There's no way that we can continue to have your property taxes go up at 2 and 3 times what your average earning increase is. And when you pay off your home in Texas and retire, you should be able to afford it, not pay for a high rent price from the state of Texas. You should actually own it. And we can do that by dropping the tax rate. School choice, school reform, funding water, transportation, all those issues as we move forward need to be prioritized and not build up the billions of dollars of debt that we have, particularly in transportation in the state of Texas. As your lieutenant governor, I will show up for work every day. I've missed 6 or 8 votes out of 16,000. I've missed 1 day out of 650, and I'm ready for the job. Thank you for being here tonight. God bless.
All right, Dan, keep the microphone. We'll start with you this time, then we'll let each other start. Let's try to do about 2 minutes on the answer, and then we will actually, I don't know that there will need to be a response because all of my questions will be to each of you.
All right.
And we'll go back and forth.
So we each have 2 minutes.
Yeah, take a couple of minutes here, and let's get through as much as we can. We have a lot of cards from the audience, too. Sure. All right, a lot of us out here are really watching with a great deal of interest the situation with the University of Texas Regent Wallace Hall.
Yes.
Wallace made it very apparent earlier this week that he will not resign. My question to you is, why am I reading in the newspapers only about Wallace Hall and why he won't resign? Why am I not reading about what he has uncovered?
Lynn, I'm glad that Wallace Hall is not resigning. Wallace Hall was a public servant appointed to the Board of Regents to look out for taxpayers, students, and parents. Now, the House has had hearings, and I have not watched every moment of the hearings, so I can't sit here and speak chapter and verse of every issue where they may agree or disagree with him. But folks, we're not going to have anyone even wanting to volunteer for these positions if they face indictment or if they face impeachment from doing what they thought was their job. Now, for those of you who do not know, what is the heart of this is it really started out with another issue, and he started looking at emails and discovered some things. And what did he discover, at least allegedly? That we have students being admitted to one of the finest law schools in the country, the University of Texas, whose credentials and LSAT scores were not as high as students who were turned down. And those who were admitted with lower scores, some say and allege that they had ties to legislators. This is a potential huge scandal in the making. If students who should have earned the right to go to the University of Texas Law School were denied a seat, and many are, there are only so many seats, because a legislator's friend, a donor's child, or a legislator's child or relative got in ahead of them with lower scores, that is wrong, and Wallace Hall should not be impeached because he's looked at that issue. We don't know the final results, but we need to play this out and see what happens, and I'm glad he's standing up for parents, students, and taxpayers.
Governor Dewhurst, same question to you. I'll phrase it a little bit differently. Do you believe there is anything to the allegations that Wallace Hall has uncovered? Do you think he was overzealous? And do you think the investigator needs to be thrown out, impeached, tried in the Senate, and removed? Or do you believe the legislature should be investigated?
Ladies and gentlemen, you have a matter going on in the House in which the House feels, at least a special committee, that they need to look at whether or not a regent was overzealous in requesting 100,000 documents, 120,000 documents. I have on purpose stayed out of this because if in fact the House were to choose to impeach Wallace Hall, the matter would go to the Senate and there'd have to be a trial. And so I want to stay as impartial, I want to stay as fair, but there's some principles here. I have always been for transparency. I have always been for trying to bring in the newest concepts, to have efficiency in our universities, to make sure that we have accountability and we've got effectiveness. And so that has been my goal from day one. So as a result, was that 1 minute? All right. So as a result, I really don't want to comment on this issue other than I hope it doesn't come to an impeachment. If it does come to an impeachment, then we're going to have to address this in the Senate. And I want the Senate to look at this very, very fairly. If the man was trying as hard as he can to do his job, that's one thing. If he was overzealous, then that's something else. But let me just say that this evening, I'm looking forward to this evening to be able to talk about issues. This is not about any controversy. This is not about an argument between Dan and Jerry Patterson and others like that. Quite frankly, Dan, as the Bible teaches us, you're a Christian, I'm a Christian, that if you've got an argument with someone, then take a fellow brother, a Christian, and go see that person. So I'm looking forward to being able to talk about the issues this evening and to discuss them with you. Thank you.
All right, keep the microphone, Governor Dewhurst. Let me ask you about something then that is along these same lines, but it is not related to the impeachment of Wallace Hall. That's the Laredo connection. Judith Zaffarini, there's Eddie Rodriguez, there's other people down there. Jim Pitts, chairman of the Appropriations Committee, whose son got into the UT Law School, failed the bar exam 3 times. Regardless of what happens to Wallace Hall, should there be an investigation of these people in the state legislature that have their own families in the UT Law School, but who can't pass the bar exam after 3 times?
Well, obviously no one wants favorites. And the admission into any of our universities ought to be on as objective a basis as possible. So to the extent that you have legislators that are trying to twist arms, and legislators who are on Senate Finance who are trying to twist arms of universities, who will be sensitive about their appropriations from the legislature, I think that's a big mistake. That's wrong. And so for that reason, I think there ought to be an internal investigation into this, but quite frankly, that was then, this is now. We need to move forward. We need to look at how we're going to continue to improve our higher education, how we can make sure that this sort of thing doesn't happen again. And that's why it's important that we strive to make sure that we're giving all of our universities the funds necessary to be able to move forward, but with the accountability that we have to know that they're achieving the job that we want them to do for our students.
Dan, I don't think I need a microphone. Same question. Assuming whatever happens to Wallace Hall, is there an investigation called for into the legislature and into specifically the admissions procedures on how we get into the UT Law School?
I just want to clarify with you, that's half the time, and then here will be stopped.
All right, thank you. Let me see how I can say this. Leadership is important, and it could turn out there could be an impeachment to the Senate. This is public record. It's been in the media. But when this all began, the lieutenant governor, and he says he doesn't want to get involved and take sides, sent a text to another regent, and he said, I'm going to take the wood to Wallace Hall. That's the text you sent to Alex Cranberg, Governor. He made that decision. He texted about 11 o'clock at night, or late at night, maybe not 11 o'clock, and I think that shows partiality very soon in the process. As lieutenant governor, I would never make such a statement. I would never send that to another board of regent. I think some would consider that a threat, that no one else should do that. So that's the difference between the two of us. I would never have sent that text at night. In terms of an investigation, we need an investigation. This is our premier university, one of our premier universities, one of our premier law schools in the country. And you as a parent or grandparent, you expect fairness. And if your son or grandson or daughter or granddaughter has the LSAT scores to get in, and a legislator's influence gets their child or relative or friend or donor's friend in instead of yours, then that's not right. And that can bring down the whole law school. So this is an issue that will probably come forth next session, and you should have a lieutenant governor that has not already made a decision that he's going to take the wood to someone for doing their job.
Keep the mic. Dan, let me ask you a question about racism and property. Texas has 3 NBA teams. Suppose somebody taped one of the owners in his own home surreptitiously, without the owner's knowledge, saying something that had some kind of bias associated with it, as we've seen with the Los Angeles Clippers. Would you believe that that would be a grounds to strip someone of ownership of a sports franchise?
What Donald Sterling said was appalling. And I think the NBA did the right thing. And I think the NBA has to understand that their entire, not only was it appalling, but the players in the NBA would have no respect for the other owners, or for the league itself, or for the commissioner, if they were to turn a blind eye to it. You know, there's a certain responsibility that comes with owning a business that's in the public eye. And we ask all the time, what do we say? We want our players to be role models. Well, our owners should be role models as well. And so I think what the NBA did, and I know Donald Sterling says he's going to challenge it in court. They want him to sell the team. My thinking is there'll probably be some settlement at some point, and hopefully both sides can deal with this issue. But it sent a very clear message, and it was the right thing to do for the NBA to bar him from being in the playoffs, and to say you need to sell your team, I believe, at some point.
All right, Dan, thank you. Governor Dewhurst, your thoughts on this, property rights versus the idea of having a bigot in a pro league?
I went up to the Red River 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, when we had representatives of the BLM, because we've got a situation in which private property rights are being trampled on by the federal government. The issue is, and you would have no reason to know this, ladies and gentlemen, but in 1999-2000, I was chairman of the Red River Commission and the Red River Compact. So I negotiated with the elected officials in Oklahoma on where our northern border should be. But we were within the constraints of a 1923 Supreme Court decision that said it was the gradient line. And we agreed on it being the line of vegetation. Here's the issue. We agreed that it's the line of vegetation on our northern shoreline with the Red River. Over the last 100 years, that shoreline has moved 1.1 miles south into Texas. Over the next 40 years, it's moved all the way back. And so the federal government is saying that 1.1 miles, and I was on Tommy Henderson's property, is federal property. It's not federal property. It's not the Red River, all right? It's got trees. It's got trees bigger than this building. That's not sand dune. It's got grass everywhere. So this is about protecting private property rights. What Sterling did was obviously offensive to all of us. We're all sons and daughters of God. And to disparage someone, the comments he made. But this is really up to the owners. I think the rules are that 3/4, is that right? 3/4 of the owners have to vote in order to make an owner sell. And that I have no idea what they're going to do, but I would think they're going to move forward in having him sell the team. So let me take just a second here to say that I was mentioning the border security just a moment. Stop? Is that too? All right.
All right, but keep the mic. Keep the mic. And let's talk just a little bit about climate change and global warming. I'm wondering exactly what you think. Do you believe that climate change is real, number one? Do you believe it's caused by human beings, number two? And if so, what amount of money, expressed in billions, would you be willing to pay for every degree of average temperature that we can make it cooler?
0. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't believe in warming change. I know that human activity generates heat. I know that there are emissions, but for instance, cows have emissions, obviously methane, all right? So what are we going to do? Regulate that you can't have any horses, you can't have any cows? All right. As the Lieutenant Governor of the state of Texas, I've been on the receiving end for crazy nonsense for the last 6 years coming out of the Obama administration. One being cross state line pollution rules that actually are penalizing the state of Texas for coal-fired plants in Illinois when the wind blows to the southeast and blows some of the particles in Texas. This is absolutely crazy. And that's why the state of Texas, you'll be proud to hear, believes in liberty. I believe in liberty. I'm a liberty guy. I appreciate Ron Paul's endorsement. And we've got to protect our rights, our liberties, our freedoms. And so that's why the state of Texas has sued the federal government 31 times. And I'm glad. We are actually winning a bunch of those, and I'm proud of the fact that I'm the named plaintiff in a number of those. I'm proud of that. Because we've got to stand up to this federal government that thinks differently than the majority of all of us as Texans. We consider ourselves conservatives. We consider ourselves, we want to protect our property. We believe in property rights, and this federal government does not.
Dan, it's been estimated it would cost several $billion, and President Obama is going to spend $2 billion in his next budget to change the weather. Is that possible? And how much money would you be willing to spend to cool the environment by 1 degree, which is about all we can do?
Well, the same answer, $0. And I understand why $0. I understand why Obama thinks he can change the weather, because he thinks he's God. He thinks he is the smartest person in the country. He thinks he knows better in Washington what we do in Texas. He thinks he's the one, through all of his executive orders, that Congress isn't even up to his level. So I'm not surprised he thinks he can also change the weather. First of all, when it comes to climate change, and there's been scientific arguments on both sides of the issues, but you know, if you want a tiebreaker, if Al Gore thinks it's right, you know it's wrong. You know, one of my favorite Al Gore stories is when he was running the first time, when he was running for president years ago, I believe it was the Texas Eagle, was the Amtrak train that ran somewhere in Texas. I forget the route. And they asked him a question. He was here in Texas. They said, Mr. Vice President, and they were thinking about stopping the train. I believe that was the story. What's your thought about the extinction of the Texas Eagle? And he says, I feel so badly. It's such a beautiful bird. I don't understand. He talks through his hat. And when it comes to global warming, you know why he's really behind global warming and climate change? Because he's made millions of dollars in it. It's a cottage industry for him. Climate change, if you let the Democrats and the liberals enact their programs, it will destroy jobs in this country and destroy our economy. I'll leave it in the hands of God. He's handled our climate pretty well for a long time.
Dan, let me change the subject here just for a moment and ask you a question, because you are a wise member of the legislature, just as David is a wise lieutenant governor, and I don't understand something. Yesterday it was Oregon, today it's Pennsylvania. Would you explain to me how one judge can make a ruling and change the entire laws in a state so that some guy can marry some other guy when the people in the state have passed a referendum saying that can't happen? How does a judge have that power?
Because we have too many activist judges who believe they are God. And they believe, again, smarter than the people. And they do not. Here's the thing that really concerns me about the activist judges in cases like this. The people of Texas, for example, Republicans, Democrats, on same-sex, for example, the people of Texas have spoken in large numbers that Texas stands for marriage between a man and a woman. So whatever state it is, whatever law it might be, there's an activist judge who decides, you know, I didn't run for office, I couldn't pass any bills. He said, I'll be a judge, and I'll take more power than that whole legislature. I don't care what the people thought who elected those people, Republican or Democrat. I don't care what they said. Behind my bench, I'm going to make this decision and overturn the will of the people. And if there's one thing that has hurt this country more than anything, I would say in my lifetime, now that I've crossed the 6.0 speedometer, is that too many courts have overturned what this country was founded upon and have chipped away at our Constitution piece by piece. And so we need presidents who make sure that they appoint the right people in the future, and that would be Republican presidents, to appoint strong constitutional judges who respect the document.
Lieutenant Governor Dewhurst, along these same lines, your thoughts on this as well. We know it's got to be coming. Liberals judge shop, as we know. We know it's got to be coming in Texas. You're already the lieutenant governor. If you're reelected and a judge says John and Fred can go get married, what are you going to do? What can you do?
Well, here's what I'm going to do. When I came into the legislature 4 years before Dan did, one of the first things I did in 2003 is I'd made a promise to grassroots that we were going to pass Defense of Marriage Act. Marriage is one man and one woman. And I gave it to a very able young man, Todd Staples, and I worked with him when we passed that bill. Then I came back in the 2005, right after that, the 2005 session, and I said, you know, I got a bad feeling. I don't want a future legislature to change this without one heck of a lot of work. And so we put it into the state constitution. It's a constitutional amendment, and you all voted on it. Thank you very, very much for doing that. So it's in the Constitution that marriage is between one man and one woman. And so quite frankly, Lynn, if somebody comes up and starts arguing that, it's in the Constitution. Now, we've got to fight against activists, both the activist federal government as well as judges. Nancy Boston, nice to see you. Thank you for everything you've done for Bell County and for the state. Thank you. But I'll give you a good example. It took me 6 years and fighting over 6 years to pass photo voter ID. I had to pass it 2 sessions in a row. And I am 200% sure it's constitutional because I modeled it after Indiana and Georgia, both of which had cases that went to the Supreme Court. But that hasn't stopped Barack Obama sending Eric Holder down to Texas, forum shopping, looking for a place, and he chose Corpus Christi and their liberal judges there. So they filed suit against us, but we're going to stand tall. We're going to beat them because that bill is eminently constitutional, and you deserve to know when you vote, the sanctity of your vote, that your vote's going to count and not be offset by someone else.
Governor Dewhurst, keep the microphone. Let me ask you about comprehensive immigration reform. President Obama's #1 advisor, Valerie Jarrett, is said on Breitbart to have secured a promise from Speaker Boehner that he will bring up comprehensive immigration reform. There are 30 Republican members of the United States House that are considering joining Boehner in supporting that. You can't stop that. But suppose it happens. How, with 30 million new Democrats, how do we keep Texas Republican?
Well, first of all, the best way to do that is to make sure that we block that from happening. I don't think there's the political will in Congress. And I know there's not the political will in Texas to address a comprehensive reform where you're providing a pathway to citizenship, amnesty, without, well, I don't believe that there's the will. I'm personally opposed to amnesty. I'm personally opposed to a pathway to citizenship because that means you're cutting in line. You're cutting in line of literally millions of people around the world who have filled out the forms and waiting the years and years and years in order to be able to be called up for a green card. That's why I've said over and over again, the first thing we need to do is to secure our border. If we don't secure our border, all we're doing is just like in 1986 when Ronald Reagan, bless his heart, signed a bill that gave a pathway to citizenship for everyone here that was here illegally. And he said later that's the worst decision he ever made. We need to secure the border. That's why I'm proud of the support I've had in the Senate and the House. We've appropriated $800 million of your money today to fill up the law enforcement toolbox so we can secure the border. Today we got high altitude aircraft that can see 6 miles into Mexico. We can see them coming. We've got helicopters. We got armor-plated gunboats, each with 4 30 caliber machine guns. Cartels know we mean business. We've got more DPS. We've got more people in the brush. What does all that mean? We ran an empirical test September and October, and we shut down all of illegal immigration drugs from the Gulf of Mexico to Laredo. And I've asked Governor Perry, he's joining me. We've asked the Speaker to join us, and we want to shut down the whole border 24/7, year in and year out, and send the bill to Barack Obama. That's what we need to do first.
Dan, let me let you comment on that too, but I want to rephrase the question for you. Some years ago, I want to talk about something you said and have you expound on it just a little bit. I followed you on the dais at a meeting in the Stephen F. Austin Hotel. You spoke right before I spoke. And one thing that you said was, you're from Houston. Houston is going Democrat. Dallas County is long gone Democrat. When I lived there and worked radio there, it was solid Republican. San Antonio has gone Democrat, and then there's the People's Republic of Austin. You said that day that our big cities are always almost lost. How do we keep Texas from going blue?
Great question. And I've been sharing this message. I did an interview with the Wall Street Journal today, and I said, share this message with the rest of the country. The idea that we are told that we will lose Texas because we will be a Hispanic majority in the future is not only unacceptable to me, because we can't, if we lose Texas, we never elect a Republican to the White House ever again, because the electoral votes of New York, California, and Texas make it mathematically impossible to win.
I don't accept
this. And I've said for a long time, this mic keeps cutting out, I apologize. I've said for a long time that if we stand on our values that match up with Hispanic citizens, they will vote for us. And what is that number one value for them? It's life. And let me give you the illustration. Wendy Davis, who's now a rock star because of the filibuster, is known for being what? The abortion queen. She had her own primary, as we all did, but we're all paying attention to the Republican primary. She lost the Valley. She lost a large number of Hispanic majority districts in the state because Hispanic Catholics and evangelicals will not vote for a Democrat who celebrates killing a bill that would take the life or save the life of a 5-month-old baby. Our party must stand on the principles of Reagan and the Word of God. The Democrats are the ones who should be worried about losing the vote, because they will never allow a pro-life Democrat, white, black, or brown, to be in a major position in their party or even speak at their convention. How do we get Hispanics to vote for us, Lynn, and take those counties back? By standing for life, for family, school choice, for educational opportunities, and by going into their communities, as I went to San Antonio and debated Julian Castro last month on Univision. And why did I do that? Some said, why would you do that, Dan? You're not running against him. You're running against Dewhurst. I said, because it gives me 1 hour to talk to their voters and their viewers without being edited and interrupted. And we won that debate, and we took that message to them about life.
Dan, keep the mic. Let me ask you a straight question, very quick. We'll do the exact same question for David. What do these two terms mean to you? The first term is Tea Party. The second term is establishment.
Tea Party. We had a debate a couple of weeks ago in Houston, statewide. Unfortunately, PBS, leave it up to a government television station, it went out in Spanish to half the state, so a lot of people couldn't see it or hear it or understand it, did not speak Spanish. But I closed my closing remarks were this. A lot of people, and I was a grassroots guy when I was elected, no one thought I could win in '06. People were shocked that we won this time, at least first place, in cracking the 40% mark. We have about 90% of the Tea Party and conservative groups in the state supporting us. And so I looked into the camera and I said, what's a Tea Partier? They love America. They believe in our Constitution. They love free markets. They love the Second Amendment. They love liberty and understand it comes from God and not government. And I looked at the camera again and I said, so if you love America, and you love and believe in the Constitution, and you love Texas and free markets and the Second Amendment, liberty, and you believe in God, welcome to the club. That's what it means to me. And the establishment, what that means to me, are some Republicans who are still living as if it's 1980. It's not. It's 2014, and it's a new generation moving forward.
Governor Dewhurst, the terms establishment and Tea Party, how do you see them?
In the primary, we had one of our debates in Waco. and I got that question. I was the only one of the four of us that got that question. And I said, let me tell you what my feelings about the Tea Party are. I believed in the principles of the Tea Party before it was ever formed. You see, I became a Republican when I was in high school. We didn't have much. I've always been a reader. My dad came back from World War II, flown 85 missions as a B-26 bomber pilot. Drunk driver ran into my dad and killed him. Mom worked 2 jobs. I worked my way through high school and college. So we didn't have much, but we had Mom, and she taught us faith in the Lord Jesus Christ and integrity. And I was brought up and to read a lot, and I got a copy, well-worn copy of Barry Goldwater's book, The Conscience of a Conservative. And I read that, and I said, you know, that's what I am. I'm a Republican. And I said, you know, that's what I believe in, a libertarian. Get government out of our way. And so I've always believed that the federal government does too much. But we're very clear. We understand as liberty Republicans, as liberty loving, that the federal government only should be doing those things that are enumerated in the Constitution. And they don't. They're trying to do things they shouldn't. And those specific duties are to protect our nation, to protect the sovereignty of our borders, which is why we have to be fighting. Texas has to stand up on border security. That I believe we ought to be abolishing the IRS. We ought to have a fair tax or a flat tax. We ought to respect the 10th Amendment. We ought to respect the states, and on and on. And so I have believed in the principles of the Tea Party. That's why I'm pleased. We've got about 1,000 grassroots activists who's endorsed us. Sean Hannity, Ron Paul, others, the majority of the conservative state Republican executive committee. I'm proud of their support. Thank you.
All right, before you put the mic down, fair tax or flat tax?
Sure.
Just, no expounding, just which one?
Sure.
Fair tax or flat tax?
You know, right now, I'd take either, Lynn.
All right, Dan?
I'm a fair tax guy.
All right, fair tax, and David said he would take either if you didn't hear that. All right, let's see how we do it. I believe you keep the microphone. Utah, as recently as 2010, held an execution. They did not use needles, they used a firing squad. Since Oklahoma can't figure out a way to do what my local veterinarian can do very easily when I take in one of my precious pets, how about 5 officers lined up, put the guy against a brick wall and shoot him?
Well, you know, there are certain crimes that I'd be all for that. I sure would. But at the end of the day, over the last 10 years, I've been your lieutenant governor. I'll move back so you can hear. Over the last 10 years that I've been your lieutenant governor, every time that Governor Perry is out of state and we have an execution, then I'm the acting governor and I have to preside over it. That's one of the most solemn things, obviously, I ever do. And I normally clear my schedule for a day or 2 days and read everything. And a lot of times I'll reach out to the defense attorney and just see if there's anything else I need to know so I can look at myself in the mirror. Well, over the years, and I don't know the number, 40 executions I've had. And it's a terrible thing that we're not able to affect many of these people earlier, that their parents and their families can't affect them.
Because these are really,
in virtually every case, awful, awful people. But here in Texas, we have been using a cocktail that is effective, I'm told painless and effective. And I don't know what they were doing in Oklahoma. Maybe they were more concerned about the border moving south and erosion and accretion, but I don't want to make fun of that. But we have a system here that I think works. And so I believe in capital punishment. I did work to pass the first time a bill on life without parole in 2005. But I think there are some crimes that are so egregious that when a jury wants to give the death penalty, we should, and we ought to put these people to death.
Dan, the state of Utah is right now considering a proposal to return to the firing squad, so it's a serious question.
Sure.
We.
Well, it's something that we'd have to take under counsel with our Attorney General. We would not want to do something that courts would call cruel and unusual, and I'm not sure how they would rule on that. We have a system that works, Lynn, and until there's some issue with that. We continue with what we have. You know, when that situation happened in Oklahoma, it's amazing how the liberal media handled that. And no one wants to see anyone die a torturous death, as this person apparently did. However, no one wrote as Paul Harvey used to say, the rest of the story. What was he on that gurney for? What did he do? You probably don't know because they didn't write about it. He broke into a home. A woman came home. He shot her with a shotgun, and he buried her alive. So that was a mistake in the Oklahoma prosecution process. But we have to stand against evil, and we should always stand for the death penalty in this state and never back away from it, because there are those cases where people deserve the ultimate punishment.
All right, keep the mic. We are down to the last question. John, based on time, can we just make this a 1 minute? This is a very simple question that I'll ask each of these gentlemen.
None of your questions are simple. They're all good.
I try. This has been a very substantive debate tonight, and I thank both of you for that. We have not let this get out of control, which is what my goal was.
No flying thing.
I wanted this to be about ideas. Okay. What is Dan Patrick's #1 idea that you would implement if you're elected?
#1 idea is to make sure that my 3 grandchildren and your grandchildren and your children have the same opportunities all of us have had in this great state. As my friend Donna Campbell, Senator Campbell, who has endorsed me, 7 senators have endorsed us and working for us, and those who are going to be coming to the Senate. 28 House members have endorsed us. Dr. James Dobson's endorsed us. Ralph Reed's endorsed us. Tony Perkins has endorsed us. Houston Police Department, Border Sheriffs, Dallas Police Department. What do they all want? As Donna Campbell likes to say, there's not another Texas to move to. So my big idea is, whether it's school choice, whether it's reducing your property taxes so you can afford to live in your home after you pay for it, whether it's securing the border, making sure we have water for the future, continuing light regulations so businesses can grow, repealing or greatly reforming the business tax, working so that we work with the other party but Republicans control the Senate. The big idea is to make sure the same Texas that we love and have enjoyed and prospered in is available for our next generation. That's the big idea.
Lieutenant Governor Dewhurst, take 1 minute if you would, and then we'll go to our final statements. What would your #1 big idea be if you're reelected?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you may not realize it, or at least I certainly feel this way. We're at a crossroads. Texas, over the last 10 years, because government doesn't create jobs, you all create jobs, but by creating the best business climate in the country, government, and you responding, and you're creating more jobs each of the last 3 years than the rest of the country combined, our economy has taken off. But people have heard about Texas. They're coming here, 1,200 people a day. Our population is going to double over the next 40 or 50 years. Ladies and gentlemen, we're at a crossroads. My big idea is I want to keep this state moving forward, not backwards. I want to make it redder, not blue. I want to keep it #1 in opportunity, #1 in jobs. And that's why I think when you decide on who you want to be, who you're going to pick to be lieutenant governor, you know that previous performance is the best indicator of future performance. So pick someone that's demonstrated they have the ability.
All right, thank you both. I want to also note that there's a lot of media here tonight. I have personally talked to a couple of local stations. I know Fox is here, KDBC out of Austin. The Houston Chronicle is here. The Temple and Killeen papers are here. The Texas Tribune is streaming. There's just a lot of media coverage. This is very important. The next lieutenant governor of the state of Texas is going to be one of these gentlemen. It's not going to be Letitia Van de Putte. So it's going to be one of these guys right here. Thank you for coming. I want to thank the media for coming. Now we have 3 minutes each to wrap it up. I believe we started with you, Governor Dewhurst. So Dan, if you'll wrap it up with a 3-minute statement.
Thank you again, Lynn. Thank you again for being here tonight. Thank you for joining the hundreds of thousands and millions of Texans who share your values and your beliefs. It's been a great blessing in this campaign. My wife would be with us tonight, except we had 2 grandbabies since January. She's helping out, daughter and daughter-in-law. We've met so many wonderful people across the state. They love God, they love our liberty, they love our state, and they understand that it's on our watch. That very idea of there's not another Texas to move to that Donna Campbell talks about is real, and they want to save this state from the Democrats taking it over. I said early that I appreciate the Lieutenant Governor's public service. He's done some good things. We've worked on some things together. I believe I bring a new energy, a new passion, a new freshness. He's had 12 years, and the things that haven't been accomplished could have been accomplished. We had all the Republican numbers. We had the majority of members. It's who assigns, the Lieutenant Governor assigns all the chairs, assigns the members of the committees, decides what he wants passed and what he doesn't. And the Lieutenant Governor can usually get 98% of what he wants and 98% of what he doesn't want. So I give you my word tonight. There's not going to be a budget coming out of the Senate unless it has real money to secure the border. There's not going to be a budget coming out of the Senate unless there's real property tax tied to reducing your tax rate off of your increasing values. There's not going to be a budget that comes out of the Senate that doesn't prioritize focusing on water and transportation and not building up huge debt. And as Lieutenant Governor, I'm not going to appoint, and I don't apologize for it, I don't backpedal from it, I'm not going to turn over the power of 6 committees. There were 6 out of 12 Democrats last session that were in charge of committees. At the end of the day, I will show up for work. Again, I've missed 6 or 8 votes out of 16,150. I've demonstrated as chair of education this session, we passed sweeping reforms almost with unanimous votes that I can lead. Again, we have 7 new senators or current senators campaigning for us and working hard for us. And after 12 years, it's time to take us in the direction to complete the conservative agenda that you want complete. I need your vote. It's going to be a small turnout. Not a lot of folks voting. Your vote counts more than ever to determine the future of Texas. If elected, and we believe we will, if elected, I will be the first grassroots candidate to achieve statewide office. When I ran in 2007, no one gave me a chance, or 2006, and we won as a grassroots conservative before it was known as the Tea Party. I ask for your vote to send a grassroots Tea Party movement conservative to the office of Lieutenant Governor. Thank you for being here tonight, and God bless.
Ladies and gentlemen, State Senator Dan Patrick. Lieutenant Governor Dewhurst.
Let me pick up where my opponent left off. I'm asking you to consider me. I'm asking for your vote. I'm asking for your vote and your prayers for this fellow who grew up in a humble home and is standing here only because I got an opportunity. I got an opportunity from a good, really good public education. And Texas provided opportunity. That's what I want for every young child, to have opportunity. That's why over the years I have fought so hard. Remember, the best indication of future performance is what you've done in the past. Yes, I've had some Democrat chairs, but the senators have a 2/3 rule. They voted for it the last 3 sessions, which means you have to have 21 votes and you got 19 senators. So what would you do in order to make sure on tough votes you've got a couple of people that will vote with you? But every committee, other than veterans, we only send bipartisan bills to, has a Republican majority. All right? I wouldn't have, this past session, co-sponsored bills with the Democrats 28 times. I wouldn't have voted with the Democrats 86% of the time. I wouldn't have co-sponsored a Wendy Davis that creates a permanent DNA registry. If you're convicted of a misdemeanor, as serious as fishing on a public wharf, I wouldn't have done that. But let's talk about what I would do. Over the years, I came in, and what did I do? My record is of accomplishment, and my opponent's is not. My record where I came in and I sat down and we passed medical malpractice reform and we passed asbestos reform that has stopped all these frivolous lawsuits, and then we passed loser pay, and then I came in and we passed a congressional redistricting. Remember the Democrats going to and I got that passed. And then I passed redistricting over and over again. And then I came in over the years, I passed 54 tax cuts. And I cut your local school property tax by $7 billion with the help of the conservative. Then I came in and we've kept your spending low, one of the 3 most frugal states in the country in per capita state spending. And then I came in and worked with Dan on the sonogram bill. I'm glad to have the endorsement of all 4 of the largest pro-life organizations, because I've been their go-to guy, fighting in order to pass legislation that protects women's health and the sanctity of our children and birth. I'm proud of what I've done. I'm asking for 4 more years to keep this state moving forward, not backwards, and keep opportunity and jobs #1 in Texas. Thank you so much.
Lieutenant Governor David Dewhurst. Let me say that into the mic. Lieutenant Governor David Dewhurst. Gentlemen, this was a great debate tonight. A lot of the state of Texas is going to see this. It was videotaped by a lot of folks. It'll be streaming. You guys did great tonight. We appreciate you coming, and the Central Texas Tea Party wishes both of you the best of luck.